It always takes so long for this. All right. Okay. So unprofessional, I know. Let me get my live chat over here so I can see. I'm going to move it over here. So if I'm looking over here, it's because I'm looking at the live chat. There we go. Hopefully it keeps up with everyone. So make sure that you can hear me well. Let me know if you can't. I test everything out. It should be good. So welcome, ladies, to tonight. It still hasn't shown up on my phone that it's going. So just a second. Make sure everything is good. There's Ashley. Hey, I was just talking to you. Welcome, welcome. All right, good. Everything is working. Okay, so we'll kind of wait until everyone joins us. Let me make sure the chat is keeping up with it so I can watch that as I do it. How was everyone's Sunday? Yesterday was a really good day. And I want to give a plug for the sermon preached at our church last night by Pastor Tom Gibson. He is he was a guest preacher from Iowa, and he has a very large family. They were all here. They are foster parents. They have 4 biological children. They just adopted 2 children. So they have 6. And then they also are foster parents. They also foster 2 other kids. So they have 8 kids right now, the same as us. Hello, Rita. And he preached an amazing sermon last night, probably one of the best sermons I've ever heard on forgiveness, just drawing parallels between the time in the Bible, which I've read through the Bible and, a few times, and I have never seen, I've read it obviously, but I never really drew the correlation between David and Saul, and David giving back Saul's spear after he had taken it, knowing that Saul was going to, he said, I'm going to eventually perish by this. He knew Saul was out to kill him. So he said in his heart, I know I'm going to eventually perish by his hand, basically. But he gave the spear back. And so it was just all about forgiveness and how we like to hold on to things and not give things up in our life. And I highly recommend that going on my husband's or our church channel and looking that sermon up called something about giving back the spear, the fear of forgiveness, I believe is what it's called. I think it's very relevant for any Christian, but I think women, we often struggle with giving up control to others after we've been hurt. And not even so much giving up control, but giving people a second chance. We don't want to get hurt again. So we tend to hold on to bitterness and hold on to things. And I think it was just great for anyone to listen to. Hey, Sarah and Julia. So getting into the topic. Okay, so I asked a question. His wife was not able. They didn't get here in time for me to even record something because they just drove from Iowa. They only live, like 2 hours away, but they had their own services and everything. So they came after that. So she did not get here in time to record with me. And she was also just not a fan. She's not on YouTube anywhere. She doesn't do podcasts. She's not a big social media person. And I don't like pushing women into it if they're not comfortable with it. So I totally understood. So that's why I'm going solo. I'm going to reach out to my friend, Monica, that is coming next week and see if she would like to do a show with me. But knowing her personality, it's probably going to be the same answer. So I'll probably be going solo again next week. But then I'm hoping the week after that my husband's aunt will agree to come on with me. So now she has done public speaking and things at other places. So I think she might be more apt to come on with me. And I'll kind of pick her brain. She is also a mom of many, 8, I believe. She had 8 children, raised them all. Many of her sons are in full-time ministry. All of her kids are in church. All of her kids are serving the Lord. So, she's raised a lot of really, really good kids. Thank you, Sarah, for putting that in the chat. Hey, Beth, how are you tonight? Okay, so let's get into the topic. So I put this question in the Gently Led Sisters Facebook group. If you're not a member there, please go ahead and request. You just have to answer a few questions, and I think you can automatically join. we don't have it set where we have to approve every single one that tries joining. If you answer the questions, I think you're pretty much in. So that is, just look up Gently Led Sisters Facebook group and that should come up. And there's a lot of good topic discussions in there, a lot of questions thrown out, a lot of advice given by moms that have done things, raised toddlers, raised, teens. So that's a really good group to join if you are not on there. But I threw out the question, what would you like to hear about? There's a lot of good topics. I chose 2. I didn't think that one would be enough to talk about, but so I chose 2. Julia actually asked for suggestions to talk about this, about kind of Easter and holidays, and how do we take a holiday and, keep it Christ-centered, especially for something like Easter and Christmas, which the world just wants to commercialize these things more and more and more. Christmas, we have Santa Claus. And then with Easter, we've got the Easter bunny and making it all about getting Easter baskets, which we've never really done, just because. And have you seen some of these Easter baskets? It is crazy. They go like way out, like hundreds and hundreds of dollars per basket. And I'm just thinking, I hope my kids never find out about this because the mentality of the world today is everyone's victim, and my kids will feel like victims because they've never gotten an Easter basket. So hopefully they're not watching right now and they realize what they're missing out on. But, the world is trying to commercialize every holiday. So I took 2 of the most voted comments, the most upvoted comments about what to talk about. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're talking about keeping Christ in holidays. And then also the second part is going to be about how to serve God when it's hard, and many of us are facing struggles. I tend to feel like March and April is kind of when in our church, for some reason, everything gets stirred up. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of a long winter and everyone's just sick of winter and emotions are high. And I don't know. I just feel like every March, April, and then summer comes and everyone's fine, but there are definitely different seasons of serving God when it comes to church, when it comes to your own personal life. So I wanted to touch on those tonight too. So, as always, like, share, subscribe. And if you have any comments, please leave it. The more comments that you leave, even if you are telling me I'm ugly, you hate me, and you don't know why I'm even on this green earth, leave a comment and it will help the algorithm. So even bad comments are appreciated. Great. Now I'm going to have like 15 bad comments from all the haters. So let's talk about holidays. So I'm glad that the Bible specifically talked about this because we have a lot of ultra spiritual people that have a problem with you celebrating them if they don't. They have a problem with it anyways, but the Bible does not have a problem with it. So I'm just going to read off these verses. I went ahead and, most of the time when I'm thinking of a topic, verses come to mind all the time. I'm always hearing the Bible preached about. I read the Bible, I listen to the Bible. I've got the Bible going in at least every day. So I'm bombarded with all these verses. And right away, I thought of these verses. Romans 14:5 says, one man esteemeth one day above another, another esteemeth every day alike. Let every man be fully persuaded in his own mind. He that regardeth the day regardeth it unto the Lord, and he that regardeth not the day to the Lord, he that doth not regard it. He that eateth, eateth to the Lord, for he giveth God thanks, and he that eateth not to the Lord, he eateth not, and giveth God thanks. Basically, it's telling you one man wants to celebrate this day, another man doesn't. But let every man be fully persuaded in their mind. I'm not going to preach this. I'm just reading the scripture and putting it out there. Go find a sermon from my husband talking about it if you want to hear more about it. Colossians 2:16, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day or of the new moon or of Sabbath days. So that verse is specifically telling you don't let men judge you when it comes to this. So basically the way I take that is I'm not going to feel bad if I decide to celebrate this and someone else looks down on me for it, or someone else is like, how dare you? You are a Christian. Why are you celebrating Thanksgiving? Don't you know that that involved violence from people coming over to America and running off the Indians? I'm not going to listen to that. I'm not going to let them judge me or let it bother me when they do judge me. So I think it's pretty clear that God leaves it up to the believer if and how they want to celebrate holidays. I do believe that we have freedom and liberty in Christ to do as we please in this area. If it's not a holiday that is, set up or created to basically serve the devil and his demons and glorify debauchery and sin and death and blood and gore, kind of like Halloween is what I'm thinking of. I do believe that there are some things that are so anti-Christian that we probably shouldn't have anything to do with it. So what are some ways that we can keep the focus on Christ during the holidays? Because let's be honest, the world has a way of taking something good and making it into a commercial greedy holiday, just like kids wanting all their Easter baskets and the hundreds of dollars put into it. And that's all they're focusing on, when we should be focusing on, I think, Easter for the Christian. I mean, Christmas is pretty awesome too, because, without Jesus coming to earth, where would salvation be? But Easter is all about the glorious gift of salvation. Jesus dying on the cross, Jesus rising from the dead. It's such a great holiday for Christians to just rejoice in God and what he has done for us. So let's talk about Easter, since it is next week. I've had people, ask me this before: are traditions bad? Am I sinful if I like certain traditions? Like maybe you do give your kids an Easter basket. That is one thing that I think you're at liberty to do. If you feel like giving your kids an Easter basket, it was something you grew up and it brought back fond memories. I think we have a way, maybe especially if we were saved later in life, to take everything that we did growing up. And because maybe we didn't grow up in a Christian home, maybe we grew up in, an unsaved home, and they did they did Halloween, and they did Christmas, and they did Easter baskets and the Easter bunny and eggs. And I feel like we have a way of just throwing out everything because, well, I wasn't raised in a saved home, so I'm just not going to do anything. But then we're not establishing memories and starting these memories and traditions for our own kids. So I think we can take the good and leave the bad. You can start traditions with your own kids without it being sinful. So I don't, and this is one of those things with the liberty thing. I don't think they're sinful. Even when it comes to stuff like 4th of July and being patriotic, being patriotic in and of itself is not a sin. These things only become sins when we idolize them, or we exalt them over God's word, or we commit sin in order to do them. So thinking of 4th of July, I believe it would be a sin to go out and get drunk with your buddies. That's taking maybe a tradition that's fun, going to see fireworks, having, hamburgers and hot dogs and grilling out with your friends, but then you're mixing sin in that. I think that's where it becomes wrong, when you mix up sinful activities in with those traditions. But you can take the good from those traditions, the barbecue with the friends and the fireworks, and have good, clean, wholesome fun that your kids are always going to look back at, and they're going to have very fond memories of. And you want to build memories with your kids. You don't want to raise your kids in a little boot camp where no fun is allowed and, nothing's allowed in your house but reading the Bible 3 hours a day and listening to 5 hours of sermons. That's not a balanced home life to raise your kids in. And chances are they're probably going to walk away from it when they turn 18. So let's think about some of the traditions that we have. So like American traditions, we've got, hello from Canada, and hello, Joyce and Allison. How you guys doing? I'm trying to keep, I think my chat is like really behind. That's why I had my phone on. Yeah, it is. Okay. So I have my phone on, so I'm kind of watching for the chat. But American traditions, like I said, I don't believe that there's anything wrong with American traditions as long as they're not involving sin. Let's think, kind of go through the list starting from the beginning of the year to the end. New Year's traditions. Now, there absolutely can be sin involved in New Year's Eve. But from the time that I was little, my parents got saved when I was 1. My dad was a drinker. And once he got saved, he just threw it all out and never drank again, as far as I know. My mom never really was a drinker. She was involved in other types of things, but she got rid of that too as soon as she got saved. So when I was growing up, we would have New Year's Eve lockouts, lockdown. What are they called? Lockouts. And basically it would just be games at church and teen activities and just ushering in the new year like that. So I have really fond memories growing up. And then when we were newly married at Lighthouse, that was the same thing. We would play games and stay there till midnight, and I loved it. And obviously no alcohol involved, no sin involved, nothing like that. Now, when we started having kids, that only lasted for a few years, and we just couldn't do it any longer with little kids. So we would come home, put the little kids down, and then we would stay up. Now that we're older, 41, I think the last couple of years we've just gone to sleep right away. We've gone to sleep before midnight. So we're just old geezers now. Oh, blackouts. I don't think it was called blackouts. It was like called a lockout or something, because we would pretty much just be like locked in the gym and like no one could leave. I mean, obviously teens and, adults and stuff were there too, but that was always really fun though. And we pretty much stay up the whole night. So that's crazy. I could never do that anymore. And then the last couple nights or last couple years, we haven't really done anything, but as you're going through the holidays, I do believe that you can take good things from those holidays to create fun memories with your kids. So birthdays are a big deal in our house, and I'm going to kind of go over which holidays we celebrate and which we don't, but this is not a checklist. Please don't take anything I do and create a checklist for your own family. Please don't model your family after mine. These are just suggestions that I've done for my family, showing that you can also come up with suggestions for your own family, giving you a guideline that not everything is a sin and not everything is necessarily holy and righteous as far as, fireworks. They're immoral. There's nothing righteous or sinful about fireworks, and that's how a lot of things in life are. It's not like they're this righteous thing, but they're not sinful either. So each family can decide for themselves, what they're going to incorporate in their family. But there is Christian traditions too, such as Easter. I've heard a lot of people that are very anti-Easter, anti-calling it Easter. They say Easter is pagan. It is mentioned in the Bible, but once again, I think this goes along with the guidelines in the Bible about one man esteeming one day above another and another esteeming every day alike. And I don't believe that calling it Easter is a sin. I don't believe that calling it Resurrection Day is a sin. If you want to call it Resurrection Day, give it more Christian term, then by all means do it. I think we have to be really careful with becoming like the Pharisees, where, everything is just, if it's not this, then you are in sin. The Bible leaves a lot of leeway when it comes to special days, holy days. And I think the Bible needs to be our guide. So God said himself, let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of a holy day. And I consider Easter to be a type of holy day, that we are observing the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. And I think it is great. I think it's a good time when a lot of unsaved people maybe darken church doors. They never do. So I do believe there is potential there to have a reach to people that you normally would not. Most Americans today are pretty heathen, but Christmas and Easter are two holidays that they will come to church. So most of the time on Easter, my husband will preach a salvation message, because that is the one day a year when a lot of unsaved people come to church. So I do believe it's good for that aspect too. Christmas is another Christian holiday. Now, a lot of Christians don't celebrate this, but when I say Christian, I don't mean Christian as far as involving Catholics, JWs, Jehovah's Witnesses. My husband used to work with a Jehovah's Witness who gave him a really hard time about celebrating birthdays, 4th of July, Christmas. They don't do holidays at all. The JWs are definitely people who judge you when you decide to do these holidays. And my husband they'd talk about it, not really debate about it, but they would just talk about it, about what they believed, what they didn't believe. My husband tried witnessing to him, countless number of times, but there are definitely Christian holidays, and Easter and Christmas definitely would be the two. And the traditions of those, I don't find wrong. you know. When it comes to Easter, there are things that my kids do just for fun. We used to dye eggs. I haven't done that in a while. I feel like the older I get, the more boring I get. Or maybe I'm just more tired. I don't know. My kids love to dye eggs and then they hide them. When they were younger, they would spend hours hiding them in the house and finding them. It was really cute. I do believe Abby and Chloe might have helped the kids dye eggs last year or the year before. And then they went outside and hid them everywhere and went and found them, and they really had fun with that. So I don't see anything wrong with that. It's just kind of a fun hide and seek game. Kids like fun hide and seek games. I don't see that they're, I don't know, idolizing that, or, you know, they really think that Easter is all about eggs. There are some fun little activities that you can find to do online. This year, I do want to make something called tomb cookies or resurrection cookies or something. Basically, you whip eggs into a meringue, and then you put them in the oven. You seal the oven overnight. That's supposed to represent the tomb. And then in the morning, when you open it, they're kind of puffy. They're really big, puffy cookie. And then when you break it open, it's empty. So it's all hollow inside, signifying that when, they came to the tomb and they rolled the stone away, it was empty. And I think that would make a really good visual for kids, especially if you read the Easter story, the resurrection story to them. I think that would be a good visual for them to see that. So there are a lot of different, if you just Google, there's a lot of really fun activities that you can do for kids. And if you're not old and tired like me, then they might really like that. There are definite cultural traditions, such as let me use this for an example. We have a Mexican family in our church, and it's a really big deal. If you are of Mexican or Hispanic origin and you're listening to this, you'll know I'm talking about. A quinceañera is a really big deal for girls when they turn 15 or 16, somewhere around there. It's a huge celebration, which usually involves things that are what I would consider sinful, such as drinking and partying and different things like that. So the family in our church decided that they wanted to hold a quinceañera for their daughter, but they did a Christianized version of it. So all the girls were in modest dresses. They had good godly music. They didn't have alcohol, and they basically had a big feast. And it was a nice time that we all, got together, and they made something that could potentially have the sin involved, and they got all that out. And that's a cultural thing. I would not do that for my daughters. It's not an American thing, so I don't think that even cultural traditions are sinful per se. I don't know. That's a different subject for another day. I think Christians can get too caught up in just being over the top with things, so that they eliminate absolutely everything from their life. And they just don't raise very happy kids that way. And they don't have a very happy home when it gets that way. So I think you need to be really careful about that. And I'm telling you, over the 20 years of being in the ministry, 21 years of being in the ministry, the most hardcore people are the ones with the most baggage at home. They're the ones with the most miserable home. They're the ones a lot of times who end up divorced. They're the ones a lot of times who kids just walk away when they turn 18. So I'm a little leery of people that are very, very, you're just a sinner if you do this. You're just a sinner if you do that. You're a sinner if you go to fireworks. You're a sinner if you celebrate Christmas and exchange gifts. You're a sinner if you call it Easter Sunday. Just watch out for that. So what do I do? What are my traditions on Easter? And every family can have different ones. We do new Easter dresses. I'm really excited about this year's because we had to match. We're doing big family portraits. My husband's whole side of the family, all his siblings, all the spouses, all the kids are doing big photo shoot in May with his mom. So we all had to wear certain colors. So I matched all the colors with my girls, and they're turning out really nice. And so we always do Easter dresses, and Amazon is a great place if you're trying to find a specific color scheme, especially. And back there on that wall, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 years now we've been here, and our 11th picture will go on that wall. And that is our Easter family picture wall. And that's really cool because starting from the first year we started the church, you can see just the progression of the kids. I think when we started, we had 5 kids. And then we ended up having Lana, Kelly, and Hannah, with a miscarriage thrown in there somewhere. So we ended up adding 3 more kids in the mix. So it's really fun having that Easter wall back there. We do, like I said, the eggs. I want to try the resurrection cookies. One year I tried it and it failed because I didn't have a good mixer. So I wasn't able to whip up the meringue enough. So I have a KitchenAid this year. So I'm really going to try to do those. And then telling the story of Jesus dying on the cross. Now, this was my favorite story as a kid. And I think it's why I was saved so early on. I asked my dad to tell me the story all the time. And I was fascinated by the story of Jesus going and dying on the cross for me. And he always told in there, how he died for sinners and took away the sin of the world, and anyone that believed on him could be saved. And I think that really piqued my interest. And that's one of the reasons I was saved when I was 4. I really just soaked it in. It's never too early to start telling that story to your kids. And then, establishing family memories for your kids is so important. There's a few main holidays. We do Easter. Just as far as the Christmas, we don't pour a lot of money into Easter. We do the new dresses, and they sometimes do little egg hunts, and that's pretty much it. We do Christmas. That's a big deal. But once again, it's not like we buy a million presents for each kid too, because we have 8 kids. We have a limited budget. So I've tried to stick to the, something you can wear, something, I haven't done the something you can read very well. I need to get better about that. Something you can play with, a few gifts per kid. Birthdays, we make a big deal out of. Every kid gets a birthday celebration. 4th of July is pretty fun. We always either have a cookout or do fireworks or something along those lines. And then Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is one everyone knows is like my favorite holiday because it's like Christmas, but without the pressure of getting all the gifts for everyone. And we only do gifts for our family, really, that we can't really afford to go out, even among siblings, aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, things like that. So we pretty much only focus on our family for the gifts. And then in-laws. Halloween, we do not do. This is a holiday centered around devilish sin, spooky, demonic things. So we don't celebrate it in any form or fashion. I feel like, our kids, they get enough with all those holidays that we do celebrate. We don't need to go along with something that was completely originated in a demonic fashion. So we definitely do not. But definitely try to show grace for others and how they decide to celebrate. Maybe someone's a newer Christian and Halloween was, very innocent for them growing up. And so they don't understand and they don't see, you don't need to judge others. You need to be patient with people. You need to show grace and how they decide to celebrate. And every family is going to be different in what they choose to celebrate and what they don't celebrate. If someone doesn't want to celebrate Christmas, then they don't want to celebrate Christmas. It's not really a big deal. So just leave them alone about it. So it's not going to hurt you at all if someone decides not to do something. You decide what's best for your family. Definitely. Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm missing all the chat. Oh, lock in. That is it. KJV. That's what it's called. Okay. Oh, Joyce, that's so cute. I did that one year. I made matching, and they are some of my favorite, looking back on pictures, some of my favorite Easter outfits were the one I did, because I did like a floral on one part and then polka dots, like the vintage colors that I love, the green and the pink, which we're actually doing this year for Easter. We're doing the vintage colors, the green and the pink like that too, the light green, light pink. They're some of my favorite outfits, but anyone that knows me knows I hate sewing. So I'm like, never again, because it was me and 3 of the girls, I think. Yeah. I think it was Abby, Chloe, and Allie I made stuff for, and they were super cute. So good. That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of churches do. And I believe it's kind of like a outreach trying to get kids in, but I don't see where we need to partake in a It's just our own personal standard that we're not going to do anything like that. We're not going to do anything like that here. The kids here too, they get plenty of fun times. We do after Halloween, because candy is 1/2 off. We do a candy from heaven Sunday, where the guys get up on the roof and they throw candy down, which is probably one of the contributing factors to my daughter's teeth this year. So I don't know how good of an idea that is. Maybe in this next year we'll do like organic gummy snacks or something. I don't know. Yes. Yeah, I agree. Canadian Christian trucker. That is a really funny name, by the way. Canadian Christian trucker. I kind of like that. Were you one of the truckers in the Canadian Christian blockade thingy? That's a funny name. I like that. But yeah, I agree. I definitely don't think we should celebrate it either. Okay, but we're going to go into, I did not mean to spend a half hour on that. I guess maybe that would have been long enough to talk about that. We are going to go into, the second part of the show, which is just serving God and keeping the right spirit, even when it's hard. I know someone specifically asked for the subject, so I'm going to spend the next 20-30 minutes going over this. I think that there's different stages when you find a church. Oh, awesome. Her husband was one of the Canadian Christian truckers. Well, good for him. I don't know if you watch the show at all, you know how I feel about it. So I'm glad someone was doing something. Someone was standing against it. That's absolutely great. So there are different stages when you first find a church. And I even believe that there's different stages after you get saved. As is with all life, anytime in life that you do something, there's going to be these type of stages. First off, there's the honeymoon stage. There's the honeymoon stage after you get saved. And then there's the honeymoon stage when you first find a church and you get plugged in and you start serving. And that's when everything is fresh and new and everything's great. And you just are on fire and serving the Lord. And I believe it's the same way when you get saved. When you get married, when you have a baby, it's like all these things, we go through different stages, right? And, when you first start serving the Lord, you first get saved, you're like, this is easy. I can do this for the rest of my life. And you're super like on fire and, everything has to go and I'm not doing this anymore and I'm going to do this and I'm not going to do. Well, be careful when you first start out. Same thing when you first join a church. Be careful about taking on too much all at once, because that has the potential to lead to burnout, first of all. And it can be, you're in it for the long haul. Okay, let's just say that. This Christian life, it is a marathon. It's not a sprint. So you don't want to just out the gate. I mean, obviously you need to work on being on fire for the Lord, being sensitive to the things of the Lord, but you need to realize that this is for the long haul. And you need to keep that in mind anytime you make a decision to serve the Lord in a different area. Every time you make a decision to start a ministry, you need to think in the back of your mind, this is for the long haul. Okay, I'm going to stick this out, whether this is for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, I'm going to stick this out. And I think that's so lacking in today in Christianity. And well, it just in character in general, right? People just, when the going gets hard, they just give up or they quit or they want to find something else, or, it'll be better if I do this instead, or if I do this instead. So there is definitely a honeymoon stage. And then it's kind of like reality hits, like, oh, just because I got saved, I still had bills. Just because I got saved, my debt didn't go away. Just because I got saved, my relationships didn't just magically fix themselves. Just because I got saved, this didn't happen or that didn't happen. And kind of when reality hits is where a lot of times I've seen this, people get saved and then they are in that honeymoon stage. Then when reality hits, like, oh, this is harder than I thought. You mean all my problems didn't disappear just because I got saved? You mean I got new problems because I got saved, you know. That's kind of when I've seen a lot of people just kind of get out of church, turn their back on it, walk away. Well, that didn't turn out the way, which in a way I'm thinking, why did you get saved? Because you realized you were a sinner and you needed salvation? Or did you get saved, or did you get saved because, you know, you thought God was just going to take away all your problems and your life was going to become magical? Because it's not that way. The Christian life is not always easy. It is very difficult a lot of times. And in fact, I think it's more difficult than the world, because we are trying to die to the flesh, and we are trying to reject the flesh and feed the spirit. And that can be really difficult at times. So after the reality stage, you kind of get into the day-to-day boring stage. So this is when kind of the allure has, I don't know, faded from, maybe you started a ministry and it's not going the way you wanted. And so now you're just kind of stuck, blah, 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 you know, meandering from day to day. And that's just kind of in the boring stage. Now, for me personally, I prefer boring over drama. So I don't mind the Sunday after Sunday, Wednesday after Wednesday. I just love being here. I love church. I love the people of God. So I don't mind the day in and day out stuff, but some people do. They want like drama and, you know, I don't know, just, what am I trying to say? They just want excitement, and like every day has to be a big day. Every Sunday has to be a big Sunday. Well, that's just not sustainable. You know, you can't, every Sunday can't be a big Sunday. Every Wednesday can't be a big Wednesday. We have to have just the day-to-day things. Usually right around this stage is when discontentment hits. And I see this all the time. I can tell with people when they start getting discontent, they usually start coming up with an excuse. They know maybe because they are involved in ministries or something, they know there's certain expectations on those who are involved in ministries, such as, you know, reliability, just day-to-day being there. And so they start coming up with excuses. Well, I can't come because of this. I can't come because of this. And then they start visiting other places. I'm going to go here this Sunday. I'm going to go here this Sunday. You know, I just need a break, so I'm going to go here. And then after, right around this stage when discontentment hits them, suddenly they notice everything wrong with everyone. Like, pastor's annoying because he's doing this. His wife is really annoying because she's too outgoing and she talks to me too much. And, you know, her kid, her 3-year-old, threw a temper tantrum, and that's just, they don't have their house in order. That's annoying. You know, the 1-year-old hit their 3-year-old, you know, so that's just annoying. You think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not really. And small problems in the church become huge. Suddenly everything is magnified. The preacher didn't shake my hand. He must be mad at me. The pastor's wife didn't smile at me when she walked by. She must be holding a grudge. You know, she has a problem with me because she's not friendly. Well, a lot of times I try to be friendly when I see everyone. It's just a lot of times I am running after the 3-year-old who's throwing a fit, and I'm running after the 1-year-old who just hit the 3-year-old because I have to deal with it. So, you know, a lot of times that just happens. It's not that I'm mad at anyone or I'm holding a grudge against anyone, just things happen. So, and then after that, you start looking for another church. You know, this church is going to be better. This church has better people. This church, you know, is in a better place. This church it's just going to be better all around. And if I have a ministry in that church, it's going to explode. You know, it's going to be easy. Starting ministries are never, ever, 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 ever easy. And I have a different perspective on this since I started a church, since, you know, we started this church. I can tell you, I've seen these stages in people since day one of our church plant, and even in our church where we came from. So going to church is like anything else in life. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it takes work to just be there to serve and keep the right spirit. And coming from a church planner's wife, here are some of the tips that I have discovered that have helped me, and maybe will help you, because when you start a church, if you are married to someone who has an inclination to start church, you have to be in it for the long haul. There are so many tough days. We started with, okay, not 0 because we had our family. We had 5 kids and us 2. We started with 7 people. 7 people. We did not know. I have a few family members here in town. They haven't even visited. So those are the only people that we knew when we moved to this town. We started with 7 and we slowly grew to about 20. Some days it was just us and one other person. Some days it was us and one other family. We've never had a service where it was just us, which is crazy with a church plant. So that's kind of weird, but it's been us and one other person. There's been 8 people in service. So if we wouldn't have had this mindset after the first year when we were running 100, we might have just said, this is too hard. It's Rock Falls Sterling. There's only 25,000. What if we move to a place that has, 100,000? Would it be better? I don't know, but I do know we are the only church in our area in a 30-minute radius that's IFB. So if we move to a bigger location, we're also going to have more competition, right? We're going to have more IFB churches. So I say competition, we're really all on the same team if we're IFB. And we have the right gospel in the King James. I consider you on the same team as us. But number one, we need pioneers when it comes to Christians. We need pioneers. We need Christians with the pioneer spirit. When I say that, I mean, we need Christians who come that want to help out. A lot of times when pioneers, they came to an unclaimed land and they put their stake in the ground and they said, we're staying here. We need Christians like that. We need Christians who will come, to this unclaimed IFB territory and put their stake in and say, this is my church. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to help this church out. I'm in it for the long haul. I have seen people raise kids in a church from baby to adulthood, and they've raised the best kids I've ever seen in my life. It's just because they were so steady and they were so grounded and just firmly planted in that church because that was their church and they were going to raise their family in it, and they raised the best kids. Just really, really good Christian people. They have servants' hearts. We need people with servants' heart, those in it for the long haul. Those who have core beliefs and principles and stick to those who aren't just trying to model their family after something and see if it works. No, that you need to have core beliefs and core principles that you're not going to give up or not do. Some core beliefs and principles such as we will be in church with our family. We will serve God together. We will not lay out because we want to go fishing or we want to, I don't know, go on a boat or something. You need to have core beliefs and principles. Strong families build strong churches. It starts in the home. If we don't have strong families, if you don't have a strong family, you're not going to have a strong church. So strong churches need strong families. That's the core of it. If the families in the church are floundering, the church is going to flounder. So that's just part of it. We need those who are firmly committed. I think the best plan is to raise your kids in one church if you can. Obviously, things are going to come up. You're going to have job transfers. Think life is going to happen, and you get thrown a curveball. You have to make the best of it. But be firmly planted. The Bible talks about this, about being, planted, being firmly planted. Don't move all over. So that's not stable for you or your kids. Some of the most unstable families I've seen are the ones that just move from here and there every few years. Let's move here. Every few years, let's move here. Every few years, let's move here. Well, you're really doing your kids a disservice. They make friends at one place. They pull up and move to another church. They make friends there because you're there 2 or 3 years. Then you pull up and move to another place. They make friends there. And it's just, they're not developing these like lifelong friendships, that are so important for all of us to have, really. So, definitely take this stuff into consideration. Just have a plan. My husband's been talking a lot this month about having a plan for your family. You need to have a plan. Sit down with your wife and please be on the same page as your wife. Be on the same page as your husband. You don't need to be raising the kids one way if he wants you raising the kids another way. You both need to be on the same page. That's why you need to have a plan. sit down together and come up with a plan for your family. We're going to do this. We are not going to do this. We are not going to do this. We're going to do this, and decide what you want to do. We're going to homeschool. This is the homeschool curriculum we're going to have. We're not going to allow this in our home. We are going to allow this in our home. So come up with this game plan for your family. Have a 10-year plan. Have a 20-year plan, whatever it is. What the plan, what the 30-year plan for us is? Liberty Baptist Church. Do you know what the 1-year plan is? Liberty Baptist Church. You know what the 5-year plan is? Liberty Baptist Church. You know what the 50-year plan is? Liberty Baptist Church. If we're still here when we're 90, that's the plan for our life. We want to be firmly planted here, and we want to raise our kids here, and we want to see lives changed here. This is where we want to be. So the ones who I've seen raise successful families are the one who did all the above mentioned. I've seen kids turned out from those homes that are on fire, serving the Lord with their whole life, good, pure kids. How do we keep a good spirit though, even when going through battles? Because we're going to have battles thrown at us. Some days we're not going to feel like going to church. Some days we're going to have a horrible day. Nothing went right. Nothing went right. We're not going to feel like being pleasant to our family. We're not going to feel like being nice to our husband and be nice to our kids and making supper yet again and cleaning up the kitchen yet again and cleaning the toilet and wiping the baby's boogery nose. We're not going to feel like that. So how do we keep a right spirit when going through battles or tough times? I think one of the biggest things is not to have a chip on your shoulder. Everyone isn't out to get you. Most people like you. I know that's true for people here. I like everyone. And I think most people like you. Most people aren't out to get you. So we need each other in the church. Your church, you need other believers. You need other believers when going through good times, so you have someone to tell. You need believers when you're going through hard times, so you have a shoulder to cry on. You need believers to keep you motivated in your walk with Christ. You need believers to say, hey, maybe this isn't a good idea. You need believers to encourage you. We all need each other. Don't be someone that people have to walk around on eggshells. Don't be one that just flies off the handle. You're easily offended. People can't be honest with you. People can't be blunt with you. So don't be that person. Keep a tender heart. Listen to the preaching. Come with a tender heart, ready for God to change you. Okay. And even though my husband is the one doing the preaching most of the time, I come ready to learn, because I have so much respect for him as a man of God and what he knows about the Bible. He knows, in my opinion, more Bible than anyone I know. And he knows his ins and outs. He knows where things are found. He knows why he believes what he believes. So I always come with a desire to learn from him, even though I'm married to him. And you know what? I see all his faults and he sees all my faults, but I recognize his strengths too. And definitely knowing the Bible and knowing why he believes what he believes and explaining it are some of his strengths. So, I see that about him. Remember who you are serving and why you're doing what you're doing. Okay. You're not doing this for the applause of men. You're not doing this just so people like you. In fact, if you're in ministry, you're going to have a lot of people that don't like you. You're going to have a lot of people that judge you wrongly based off the intentions of their own heart or based off their own heart, a lot like the Pharisees did. In fact, I wrote a post this past week, kind of talking about this kind of exact thing. And I kind of wanted to read it right now. But yeah, so my dad was the most gracious, helpful person you'll ever meet. He loved people. He very rarely had a bad thing to say about people. He was an extrovert and he just loved life. And what you saw with my dad was what you got. So I tend to take after the extroverted side of him. I love meeting new people. I love talking. I'll adopt introverts. In fact, most of my best friends in my life have been introverted, which is funny. And I adopted them and we became friends, and I haven't gotten rid of them and they haven't gotten rid of me. So my mom's honest and she knows what she believes and she isn't afraid to stand for it. She taught me how to think and how to be independent. and I take after the logical, honest way of approaching life. I'll never understand why someone would befriend someone else and then try to trap them in their words. That's what the Pharisees did. If you look through the Bible, they were always doing it. Their motives weren't pure. Their intentions were not honest. The Pharisees were the narcissists of Jesus's day. They only talked to Jesus in order to expose him. They twisted everything he said. They judged him based off of their hearts. They tried to discredit him and say untrue things about him to others. They used scripture out of context and only to their advantage, and especially to tear him down, to make him look bad. They would do that. And I'm amazed at how the Bible is always true and people never change. So I have some core beliefs when it comes to interacting with people based off things I saw in my parents. And much of this too is because of things that have been done to me, to my family, to my church. So these are ways that I have to operate. I won't use private conversations against you. I have a huge problem with people sending screenshots of conversations to others not involved in conversations that were supposed to be private. I will try to treat you with grace, even if you aren't using it with me. I don't do name calling. I don't use foul language. 2 core principles that I have for myself. I don't believe in using anonymous accounts. Having my name by my words brings accountability, and I firmly believe in that, even though I have been accused of it many times. This accusation has been thrown out. I've noticed in some YouTube comments, accusing them of an anonymous account of being me, a troll account of being me. I don't have anonymous accounts. If I say anything publicly, my name is always by it. And I do that so that I won't be tempted to say nasty things about others. There's no need for personal attacks. Keep the issue the issue. In the world of social media and technology, things can get crazy. Accusations can be thrown out with no truth whatsoever. If I didn't have a set of principles for myself to follow, I could easily get carried away. Even if the others don't have the same policy, these are things I try to follow. Okay, so that's basically the gist of it. I have some core beliefs and core principles for what I do on social media and things that have to do with my name, putting my name by my words, things like that. So you have to realize that when you are in even a public ministry such as Gently Led Sisters, I had a lot of scrutiny and I have a lot of people judging me. And I found in the past that a lot of times judgment comes from when judgment comes from certain people that I know. I always look inwardly when someone confronts me with something or accuses me of something. And I'll even ask my husband, my friends, and most of my friends are pretty honest. I think they would tell me if they saw any truth to it. But I asked the ones closest to me, is there any merit of truth to this? And if my husband's like, no, because he doesn't have a problem telling me if I'm struggling in an area, if he's like, no, they don't know what they're talking about. That's a good indicator that that person is judging you off of their heart and their intentions and what they perceive. And a lot of times it's just coming out in the way that they're harshly judging you. So when you have any type of ministry in the church, you've got to realize that you're going to have attacks. And people are going to say nasty things about you. They're going to say nasty things about your family. I've tried to adopt this policy. I don't always do well at it. I'm trying just not to defend myself anywhere, because most people, if they're saying nasty things about you publicly, they already have their mind made up, and they've said it publicly now, and pride is involved. And even if you show that they're wrong or correct them, they're not going to take it because pride is involved. And they would have to humble themselves to take back those words or put out a public apology. So most of the time, it's not worth it. And those that know you in real life know that you're not like that. So it actually makes the other person look bad if those things are untrue, and those close to you know that they're untrue. And the general, most people know it's untrue. So just realize, though, that in the ministry, in life, you are going to have attacks. You're going to have people say untrue things about you. And I found it's just best not to go back and forth publicly. It doesn't accomplish anything. I sometimes I fail. I'd really, really try not to, but especially if they bring my kids into it, that's really tough for me. They bring my kids into it, even my husband. I know he can defend himself, but I know the man. I live with him. So when untrue things are said, it really, really aggravates me. Follow leadership, follow, what is the verse talking about? Follow me as I follow God, or I'm totally butchered that, something along those lines. If there are different roles of leadership, even in a dichotomy, even within a church, and there is one shepherd, so he is doing his best to follow God and feed the flock. So a lot of times, I definitely would be careful about talking about problems behind his back. Go to the pastor. If there is a problem, direct your concerns to him rather than other people in the church. Remember, it's God over man all the time. The Bible he has, even though there is leadership, there are certain boundaries to that leadership. He has no right coming into your home and telling you what to do. His only sphere is, leading the church. Just remember that when it comes to serving the Lord, when it comes to anything, our day-to-day life, raising children, being submissive to our husbands, loving our husbands, there is joy when it comes to those things, all those things. Joy is not dependent on your circumstances, but it is dependent on your mindset. Joy comes from within. Where is your source of joy? Your source of joy should not be dependent on those things, because what if they're dependent on your children and you can't have children? What if, well, I'll be happy when I get married, but you're not happy when you're single. I'll be happy when I have a kid, but you can't have kids. I'll be happy when my kids are grown and out of the house, but you keep having kids. There's always a situation. There's always something that's going to be right out of reach. And you're going to live your whole life just wanting the next best thing and not enjoying the blessings that you have now in your life. Look for those blessings. You cannot control others or what they say to you or about you, but you can control your response. Okay. If foul language, and believe me, I've had foul language thrown at me. I don't need to do foul language back. I've had insults thrown at me. I don't need to insult back. Be a woman of grace. I still believe a gracious woman and a classy woman, be a woman of class. I still believe that a classy woman won't use foul language. I still believe that a classy woman will stay above personal and petty insults. And I believe a classy woman will not get down into the mud and mire of mudslinging. That's just a classy woman doesn't do that. So have some principles when it comes to interacting with people in real life and online. You have to have those core principles. Now, when it gets really tough serving the Lord, whether that's you're going through battles, maybe you're just exhausted and you're tired, definitely recognize the signs of burnout and maybe take a trip. Maybe it's been a year and you haven't missed a service at your church and you really are on the edge of burnout. Just, if you're involved in a ministry, tell your pastor, I need a week off. It's time for me and my family to get rejuvenated, visit another good IFB church. Sometimes it's good to visit other churches to see how good you have it at your own church. I think we can get too complacent with the blessings that we do have at our own church. So sometimes it's good to visit just to see that, wow, I have it really good at my church. I felt that way before. But definitely keep the important things important. And what are those? Number one, our relationship with Jesus is number one. Be in your Bible, be praying, be listening to the preaching every chance you get. Find good sermons like the one I mentioned Sunday night about forgiveness. Number two, your marriage. That is more important than even your kids. You have to keep your marriage, which means communication, talking to each other, loving each other, putting his needs first, him putting your needs first, him cherishing you, you respecting him, you both being nice to each other. That is so important. Number three, your kids. They come right after marriage. These are the order of importance. Jesus, marriage, kids, your home. Those all go above church. Okay. Church would be next. That is super important. All of these things are important, but you've got to have a good, solid home in order to have a good church. You have to have that. So then after church, I would put all the other stuff, homeschool activities, fun events such as going to the park, going on a boat, grilling out with friends. I would put all that after that. So just keep those things in order of importance. You have to keep your priorities right, especially when going through tough times. And I believe that if you do that and you just stay faithful, God will bless you. God will bless you above and beyond what you even thought. Keeping the right spirit. Sometimes you cannot think those negative thoughts. You, as women, maybe someone is having a rough day and they come into church and we say hi and they don't hear us. They ignore us. Suddenly, why didn't they say hi to me? Does she have a problem with me? Did I do something? Did I make her mad? All these things start running through our head. Maybe they were just running late and flustered and the baby puked on the way to church and they had a blowout. You don't know what happened. You don't know how their morning went. And they just didn't hear you. They were thinking about things. I get really caught up in my thoughts sometimes. And someone will be like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "What? No, I'm fine." They're like, "You just looked really mad." I'm like, no, I wasn't mad. I was just thinking. I get very intense when I'm thinking. So I have to be careful, even my thinky face, because I'll be sitting there and I'll just be, have a face like that. And people think I'm mad. I'm like, no, I'm not mad. I'm just thinking about something. I get caught up in my thoughts a lot because I have a lot in my mind. So, I'm not mad. I'm just thinking. But yeah, character is shown during the hard times. It's not shown when everything's going great. If you have a booming church and a booming ministry and everything's fun and it's always a big day and it's always a high day and there's never low days and you're just there for every single service with the right spirit, a smile on your face, let's serve the Lord, life is grand. It's not very impressive. It's when there's 8 people, everyone's out sick. You just don't feel like it because you got some bad news or you had a really bad day and, you stubbed your toe and your dog ran away and the supper burned and the, alarm went off and all these, you lost your car keys, all these bad things happen. Character is shown during the hard times. It's not shown during the good times. Everyone can be happy and joyful and content during the good times. That's not impressive. It's when everything is hard, when the going is hard, that's when real character comes out. And I'm so glad that I married a man of character because this church would not be here had I not. I believe it's 2 in 5 church plants don't make it, 3 in 5. It's a very high percentage of church plants don't make it. It's very, very hard. And serving God sometimes is very hard. Keeping the right spirit sometimes is very hard. But just remember, that's when true character comes out. That's when you show what you're made of. That's when that pioneer spirit comes out. And you can encourage others and let's keep going, and that's when it's seen. Character comes out when your buttons are pushed and nasty things are said to you. How do you react when someone throws false accusations your way? I always like to think of, I just bit my tongue. I always like to think of when Jesus didn't say a word, when people were, saying things against him, because he knew these things weren't true. And, they had hired like false witnesses. So what was he going to do? He had the 2 or 3 witnesses. So, I try to think of that. Jesus said not a word. It's really hard. It goes against our natural desire to want to defend. We have a natural desire in us to want to defend our name, to want to defend ourselves, to want to defend our character. But I have found throughout life that the truth is always revealed in the end. And true character does come out, but it comes out when the pressure's on. It doesn't come out in the good times. It doesn't come out when everyone likes you. It doesn't come out when church is going great and your life is going great and your husband got a raise and your kids are all doing wonderful. No, character comes out when the pressure's on. So, and your kids are going to see more through your actions than your words. They're going to see, they're going to know things didn't go very good at home today. Everything was breaking and this happened and this happened, but mom and dad got in the car and they went to church. Mom and dad kept a pleasant spirit. Mom and dad still loved each other. Mom and dad still loved us. Mom and dad nurtured us and cared for us and provided for our needs, even when the going got tough. So just keep those things in mind. I wish I was more of a motivational speaker. I don't know what to say other than that. I'm preaching to myself because there's been times in the last 11 years when it's been really tough. There's been times when I just want to go live on an island somewhere. Even since starting Gently Led Sisters, I get a lot of very positive emails. I do. And I love the community of Gently Led Sisters that we have on Facebook, the Facebook community group. We have almost 400 in there. I love the women in there. But there's been a lot of nasty things that do. So, and I don't know who came up with words don't hurt saying, because it's not true. Words do hurt. But I've just learned to look inwardly. And is there any truth to this? If there is, I need to work on it. If there's not, then I can't help that person's perception of me. So I know I focused a lot on relationships with the whole serving God thing, but when you serve God, a lot of it's going to be with relationships with other people. It's going to be relationships with the unsaved people when you're out soul winning, trying to get them to come to Christ, trying to get them to listen to the gospel. It's going to be with unsaved coworkers or unsaved family. It's going to be with God's family in church. So much of serving God is wrapped up in relationships. And if you're the type of person that can't get along with anyone, you might be the problem, so definitely look inwardly, try to fix that. But I can, from the outside looking in, sometimes I can kind of pinpoint, just like people probably can with me too. I can kind of pinpoint, but until a person comes to that realization themselves, whatever, until that person realizes that they have a problem, there's nothing I can do or say. So hopefully you found some type of advice. I don't have all the answers. I'm learning along with you all as we go. I don't think I'm better than any of you. I'm right in the trenches alongside of you. But when it comes to church planning, I do have 11 years of experience. And so if anything I said can help you as you endeavor and start your own ministries in churches, I'm glad, but the main thing is character comes out when the going gets tough. There's going to be hard times. It's not going to be easy. And remember why you're doing it. Why do you want a ministry? For self-exaltation, or do you want a ministry because you want lives changed? You want homes restored. You want people to come to Christ. You want the gospel to transform lives. Why? Why do you do what you do? So I always look at that as the basis for anything you do. Why are you trying to raise godly kids? To make yourself look better? Or so that they can go out and have lives changed. They can go out and give the gospel. They can motivate people to live better, holier, separated lives by their lifestyle. Why do we do the things we do? So hopefully that helped. Could I go over specific signs of burnout? Sure. Wanting to sleep all the time, not wanting to do anything outside your home, not wanting to see anyone, people annoy you. Life has lost its sparkle. You dread going to functions. You would rather just stay home and sleep or veg out in front of the TV. You have no interest in deepening relationships. When I start seeing these things in my life and everything annoys you, every person annoys you, every situation annoys you, you're mad, you're angry. When I start seeing these things in my life, I take a step back. I've learned through the years, take a step back and fix it. Take a break, go away for the weekend with your family, go to an indoor water park or whatever, float your boat. There's modest swimwear you can wear. You can go on times when there's barely anyone there during the week, especially when other kids are in school. I've found deserted indoor water parks before. So go away with your husband, go on a date, do something, go out for coffee, do something to help. So I've definitely recognized that it always hits me about January or early February. Kind of a hard time of year for me. I'm sick of the cold. I'm sick of the dark. It's horrible. So I always try to plan a trip somewhere warmer and sunnier. This year it backfired on me. I went to Texas to see my sister, and then I brought the weather with me, and they ended up getting snow and ice and everything in Texas. It's crazy. So yeah, definitely look for those signs and do something to fix it before it gets to the point where you make a bad decision. All right, finding a different church, we need to move. You get so discontent. It's just caused you so much burnout, and you get so discontent that you just make very rash, bad decisions. Not a good frame of mind when you get to that. So do something about it when you see those signs. So I hope that helps. All right. That's awesome. Christian trucker, I guess I'll call you, because that's what I try to do too. I also try to do a date night with my husband every week. I feel like so many days it's just, we're here, there, and everywhere. And that's kind of our time to just refocus on each other and talk to each other. And I'm sorry I missed a lot of the chat. I hope I didn't miss a lot. If you guys have any more questions, leave them down below. Leave comments, helpful suggestions, hate comments. Sure, why not? If you'd rather just send it to me in an email, go ahead and do that. gentlyledsisters@gmail.com. So whatever you do to help the algorithm. So maybe this will help someone else who is having a hard time with these areas, specifically keeping the right spirit when serving God and all of that. So, all right. Hi, Valerie. Nice to meet you. Okay. See, I missed that part of the chat. Nice to meet you. Glad you are with us, and tell your husband, I think his name is really cool. So, all right, guys, we will see you next week. I might delve into one of the other topic suggestions. I got a lot of suggestions about dealing with toddlers, which I am there right now myself, but I found a really good, helpful tool this past week that I never knew in all 21 years of child rearing that maybe I could share during that segment. So that'll be the teaser for next time. So I hope you ladies have a good week. Have a great Easter. I love Easter Sunday. It's going to be a great tune in for our live stream on Liberty Baptist Church. We're going to have a lot of this Wednesday too. We're going to have a lot of awesome music. Our music director here has done a great job putting it all together. Sunday, I'm very excited about the music. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. So check out that sermon if you haven't, and join us for Easter live stream if you don't have a church. If you have a church, go to your church. Do not join us in the live stream. Please go to the church on Easter. You can catch the live stream after your church service. So we'll see you guys next week. Okay. Have a great week. Bye.